the fourth day of Christmas, namely 90s gave to me. 4 Jinx are rapping, 3 calls to butter, 2 former husbands, and Santa holding a store hostage.
Nice. Yeah. In good time.
Cool. That sounded great.
Did you say it sounds great when you didn't have your headphones on?
I can still hear it.
Welcome to Namely 90s. Wow. The podcast that takes you back to the time before smartphones, Google, and Y2K. Join your hosts as they relive the pop culture that shaped a generation and the parts that many people wish they could forget. Listen in to the conversation about how the decade defined those who spent their childhood there and how it shaped them as adults. So, turn down the grunge and dial up the internet. Let's get started. It's time for Namely 90s.
That's right. You're listening to Namely 90s. My name's Andrew, and over there is Brandon.
That's me.
You can find us online at namely90s.com or on Twitter and Instagram at namely90s with the 90s. You can also find the show on YouTube at youtube.com/@namely90s. And if you'd like to support the show, head over to patreon.com/namely90s, also with the 90s, and get signed up for one of the support levels. And here we are back again. Welcome to the 4th day of the 3rd annual 12 Days of Christmas specials.
Yes. Merry Christmas Eve, everyone. It's December 24th.
Gosh, I feel like I haven't talked to you since yesterday, but actually just earlier today.
Yeah. Time dilation's weird during our specials. But yeah, we had a great time with Jamie from the 80s and 90s Uncensored yesterday, talking about I want to say Futurama, but that was 2 days ago. Yesterday was
Married with Children, which was that was a slog for 21 minutes. That was
just 10 hours ago, and I could not remember what we talked about.
But today we're lucky to have another returning guest.
Oh, yeah.
That I will now have Brandon introduce.
You know what's great? All the returning guests are just so prompt about like booking their times, and they've been so considerate. And
I'm surprised they didn't block us from Twitter. Honestly,
it's been hard. They have to follow me. There was a time when I was really into Prompto like a month ago, so they just got spam after spam. Anyways, it's Scott Murphy returning from All 90s Action All the Time and New Horror Express.
Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, hey Scott.
Thanks for having me back on.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure if it would happen, but
Well, I'm so
sorry, I can't remember what was the guest star appearance on our show.
It was your favorite.
X-Files.
Yeah.
X-Files.
Oh, yeah.
So fun story. After you had your guest spot with us, then all 90s Action All the Time kind of went on hiatus the following month. For the majority of 2022, but you did come back again, and I think I guest hosted like 3 out of the 4 episodes that I like. How many episodes have you had so far this year? I know.
We've had a few. Basically, yes, it wasn't quite as immediate. It wasn't quite as immediate as a collapse as that. But so we put 2 episodes out in January, for January, which is something we're bringing back.
Nice.
So we did that, and then we did an episode in February covering the 3 Ninjas, and then basically I said it's too much. I can't do all these podcasts, because New Horror Express also has a side series, which I'm wrapping up right now, called the Guilty Pleasures Podcast. And I was like, oh, it's all too much. And then what happened was somebody got in touch with me for this podcast network called the Last of the Action Heroes Podcast Network. And they were like, can we have your podcast on the network? And I was like, well, the podcast doesn't really exist now, but yeah, sure, you can have our back catalog. And then, so I was like, I kind of pondered it, and I was like, maybe I can put out a couple episodes this year, just take it easy, just have it very sporadic. And then, so we came back in like June. So it was Con Air, which you were on Con Air. And then we did like a mini Bond season, covering the 90s Bond movies. So that's 3 Bond movies, and you were on 2 of those.
They didn't ask me back for the 3rd.
Yeah, the world is not enough. You didn't come back for that. But we did those, and then we've got for our Christmas special, we're doing Batman Returns. So I ended up doing a lot more episodes than I thought I was going to do when the show collapsed in like February. And then next year in 2023, we're coming back as a monthly show.
That's fantastic.
Very cool.
Yeah, you have so many podcasts to juggle. It's impressive that you're also guesting on ours again. So we appreciate that. And I do appreciate being on 3 of your episodes this year. It was a fun time. I got to relive Con Air, which I don't think I'd seen like from front to back before that episode. You could find all this by searching for All 90s Action All the Time. And yeah, I got to talk about 2 of the Brosnan Bond movies that I enjoyed. Not the one that I used to borrow on either DVD or VHS from Andrew, but yeah. Yeah, it was awesome. So what's been going on with New Horror Express? You said you had a side project called the Guilty Pleasures podcast?
Yes. So basically, in conjunction with another podcast that I'm kind of friends with called Bloodhound Picks, which are not really doing much at the moment, but they
retweet us a lot.
Yeah, well, that's because Bloodhound. 1/3 of Bloodhound Picks is Craig, my co-host on All 90s Action all the time. So that'll be why. Yeah, so the Guilty Pleasures podcast was started because of them. They were doing a kind of project with lots of different podcasts, and we're saying, do you have any ideas for like a side series you could do? And I was like, I can do this, which is like covering guilty pleasure horror movies of the 21st century. And I started that, like about 30 months ago. I've been doing it monthly, and we're going to do our last one in December. We just put out an episode. The November episode was Hollow Man, and then the December episode is we've covered a couple of Christmas horrors. The December episode is going to be a film called Sleigh Bells,
nice,
which is spelled Sleigh being spelled SLAY, Bells being spelled BELLES. So that's puntastic. We like puns. One of the other Christmas horror movies we covered was Santa's Sleigh, which again, Sleigh is spelled SLAY, and that one stars Bill Goldberg and is just as a killer Santa, and that's really all you need to know about Santa's Sleigh. If you know who Bill Goldberg is, former professional wrestler. So yeah, we're doing that, but that's kind of coming to a close. But New Horror Express will still be going strong. It's a fortnightly interview show where I just interview horror film directors mainly, but also horror novelists, screenwriters, actors, just anybody working in kind of modern indie horror today. This is kind of who I'm talking to there.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's always cool to see who you pull for the podcast. We don't like admitting it, but we're not the biggest horror buffs over here. We're real pansies about it. But
it's true.
I like a good thriller.
I don't mind a thriller. I don't like those like gratuitous jump scare movies. Those are no good for me.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's difficult because like there's a lot of things that I think most people who are not horror fans don't consider horror, whereas something like me, a horror nerd, there's lots of things I consider horror that a lot of people would be like, that's not horror. Like things like the classic examples of like kind of in between things that some people grab as thriller and some people grab as horror because they are horror movies. Is things like Silence of the Lambs, Seven, basically every serial killer thriller made in the 90s.
True.
Yeah, see those I well, not exactly that list, but I like some of those, but it's those ones where it's, like the your Paranormal Activities or your other ones that are just very much like just building suspense so they can scare you with a jump scare, and then it's like kind of thin after that. I don't know. Like that's the stuff I don't care for.
I mean, I just, I like the movies as like the concept, but I'd hate being
good example.
scared.
The movie Signs. I like that movie. It's a little scary at parts, but it's not like, too bad.
Alien.
Sometimes I walk around. I have 3 children under 6, 6 and under. And I walk around my house, 7 and under. I don't know what year it is anymore. And I walk around and I'm like, I feel like I'm in the movie Signs because they just leave half full cups of water all around the house.
and
but then I realize I'm just living in a different nightmare. What? No,
they scurry through the door frame, and you're like, what?
And then I hit them with a baseball bat. No, that's not. Whoa. No, I'm kidding. That's the aliens. I'm just kidding. Oh my gosh!
Podcast of Horror 3 this year, we tried to get Andrew to. Andrew's like, we should probably watch a horror movie since we were calling it a podcast of horror, and then I compiled an excellent list of 90s horror movies because I do like the millennial era horror movies of like that are like self-aware, a little meta, like Scream.
Oh, you mean the Scream and Scream inspired kind of? I know what you did last summer, urban legend kind of movies. Yeah,
where they kind of acknowledge that they're in a horror movie,
a horror universe.
Those are kind of, I can get behind, but we ended up, what did we cop out with? Gremlins 2.
I still can't drive behind a log truck because of the movie Final Destination, but
I love Final Destination.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I understand that. I love Gremlins 2. Gremlins 2 is a great. No, that's
the real horror is the quality of the movie, but.
Gremlins 2 is a great movie. I will not have anything said.
I did actually. So I will tell you, we watched this movie. I actually haven't seen the first Gremlins. The second Gremlins.
It's the better one.
I was watching this movie on my headphones in, and I was laughing out loud for a good portion of the movie. It was pretty hysterical.
So here's the thing: a lot of film buffs and like specifically horror buffs, which is weird because the sample size is getting bigger now that you just said you love Gremlins 2. Like I feel like there's a lot of like horror film buffs love Gremlins 2, and it's perplexing to me.
I think it's because it's like a nerd thing. I think in terms of, I think I go back and forth of what is better, Gremlins or Gremlins 2. I love them both. Sometimes I veer more to the one or to the other. And I think like more recently I've veered more to Gremlins 2. And Gremlins has a stronger story and it has a greater emotional core.
Yep.
But what Gremlins 2 has is it is a brilliant parody of sequels, and it has like a manic, crazed energy. Like, and so also, I love its manic, crazed energy. And also, like, of the 2 films, like the biggest laughs I think come in Gremlins 2. And do you know what? I just admire when somebody has reached a certain stage of their career and a studio has given them a bunch of money. And then instead of, and then they've just entirely gone with their own demented vision. I love this when filmmakers do this. I loved it when Nicholas Winding Refn made fucking Only God Forgives. I love, Panos Cosmatos got some money and then he made Mandy. Robert Eggers got a bunch of money and he made The Northman. Like just people who are just like, fuck it. Maybe I'm only going to get this chance once. And that's what Dodonte did. So just for that, I admire the fuck out of Gremlins 2. I'm sorry, can I swear?
Yeah, absolutely. Your special is one of the ones that gets the nice little E next to it.
Okay. So yeah, and I just love I think like maybe because I like kind of surreal kind of comedy. I'm a big Monty Python fan, all that kind of Kids in the Hall, like that kind of demented, weird, absurdist energy to Gremlins 2 is what really attracts me to it.
That's fair. I guess I was being
also it has one of the greatest fourth wall breaking jokes where Paul Bartel comes and taps Hulk Hogan on the shoulder to shout at the Gremlins to start the movie again, which makes me laugh just as hard now as it did the first time I saw it when I was like, I don't know, 8 years old.
For me, it was just like the satire and like the random sound effects. Like there's just one scene where some stuff was going on and there was like this ridiculous boinging sound effect in the background. And I was dying. It was really funny.
Very slapstick.
I gotta be honest.
I think Gremlins 2 is even funnier now than it was then because like John Glover's performance that's clearly a piss take of Donald Trump is amazing.
So spot on. Yep. I guess I was being reductive when I said that it's the secret of the ooze of the Gremlins franchise. But we didn't bring you here to talk about Gremlins 2. No. We brought you to talk about different types of gremlins. Pocket monsters. So Scott, we all watched Pokemon, the animated series, the first original run episode, I think like 65, Holiday Hi-Jynx.
Yes.
But before we get into that episode specifically, I thought we would go around and talk about our experiences with Pokemon. It could be the show, it could be the games, what have you. Scott, do you want to go first?
Sure, I can go first. So when I'm not much of a gamer. I mean, I was kind of a gamer at the time in the late 90s, but Pokemon was never a game I played. I suppose I have a kind of weird relationship with the animated series in that, so I believe that the animated series first aired in the UK in 1999, when I was about 14. So I kind of saw myself as a little bit too old for Pokemon.
Right.
However, I do have a brother who is 6 years younger than me. So he was like 8 years old at the time. He is very much a gamer. He was big into the games. He loved the show. So like I was kind of forced to watch it. And despite my kind of snobbery towards it, and like, because I had already discovered kind of more quote unquote kind of grown up anime and I'd seen some like Ninja Scroll, Fist of the North Star, Neon Genesis, whatever. And then like, because being forced to watch it, it kind of grew on me, and so I still have a little bit nostalgia for it, as to be said, just because I remember like sitting watching it with my brother on a kind of Saturday morning.
I wonder if Andrew, your brother, has the same experience. You're muted still.
Bad. I was trying not to make noise. I think it was like, didn't it come out when we were about 10?
Yeah, so it was 99 when the anime kind of hit.
I mean, he
Western
was into stuff just a couple years older than me. So like, I don't really have any recollection of, say, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I was just a few years behind that, and he remembers that. So no, they were making fun of us for liking Pokemon. Remember?
Yes, I do remember. I do remember that. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't remember exactly how I got into it, but I definitely remember being into like the cards and stuff. Thank you, Brandon. And then obviously this show and then the Game Boy games. This show, I mean, we watched this pretty religiously. I certainly haven't seen it all because we didn't have, DVR or streaming back then.
Oh, I made sure I was home on a Saturday in control of my television for the most part.
It's good. It's good.
Yeah, same. So I was introduced to I think the anime first. Maybe it was 97. It was when we were in 3rd grade. That's 10 years old, right? Give or take. And I brought this up in the podcast during our first year, I think, but one of my friends, Ben H, he introduced me to the anime when I was over at his house one afternoon. I was like, this is awesome. And then the games came out around the same time. And so like it was a syndicated edition, like on one of our local channels.
Yep.
UP. Well, it was on UPN.
First run, or no? I don't.
No, it was
first run.
It was before.
First run.
It was before it made it. So it was before it made it to the WB, because I remember distinctly when it came to Kids WB that like it was an event that I was like, they were starting it from the beginning, and like I had to be there to watch it at 9:00 in the morning on a Saturday to see the first episode of Pokemon. But I do recall seeing episodes prior to it, like how Dragon Ball Z or Sailor Moon had like these weird syndicated runs with a different like dub set before it hit the mainstream market. So that's how I got into it. And I got my dad to take me to Target, and I got Pokemon Blue, and haven't stopped playing from there.
My dad still remembers taking at least me, maybe us, to the Pokemon movie.
It was the second. It was the second one. It was the second one where we got the. I think it was the second one. Maybe it was the first one. Was it the first one?
Seem to remember it fondly.
Yeah. I do remember that, and I remember we got the ancient Mew card, or
yes, there was a Mew. Yep.
Yeah.
There was like a coin or something. Like it was something. It was cool. Whatever. It was.
Yeah, the first two we got cards. I remember that. I think I went with my parents for the second one because I remember getting all 3 of the legendary birds, which I was like, yes. But yeah, I went to the Toys R Us Pokemon Dual League card.
Toys R Us.
League.
Now you're just dating yourself.
I know, right? That's
I didn't go to see the Pokemon movie at the cinemas, but I do remember my brother renting it on VHS. So just thinking about
Be kind, ourselves. Rewind.
Oh yeah, it's the. I think I had the first 2 on VHS. Yeah. And I don't think I ever saw the 3rd movie because we were too cool for it, even though I still watched it at home. Just like the Power Rangers. And so at one point it might have been before the pandemic when Netflix still had it, I went back and started watching this original run through Indigo League and Orange Islands and all that. But I got bored at some point because I know I haven't seen like Black and White or whatever all the other ones are. But I have Netflix, at least in the States, has picked up the current Journeys, I think it's called. So I've been watching that, and the Scarlet and Violet just came out for the Switch, which is the 9th generation Pokemon game. And I'm playing that currently. I played up through the 5th generation and kind of got bored there, and I came back for the 7th, and which wasn't that fun, and 8 kind of got me back into it again. But yeah, that's Pokemans. Did I get everything? For those of you at home that don't know, Pokemon is a portmanteau of Pocket and Monsters, which is abbreviated from the original Japanese title for the show and game. It was it premiered in April of 1997 on Tokyo TV, so it makes sense that it took at least a year to get to Western audiences. And there's several sequential series, as I just mentioned. Currently we're on Ultimate Journeys in the West, and they just started a new one, I think, or ended, I don't know, because Ash finally won some tournament or something. And the series creator originally said, when Ash finally wins a tournament, like the big tournament, the show is over. So let's see what happens there. Shall we get into the episode? Or any other Pokemon thoughts?
Well, no, I just saw your point about how. Well, I guess you have to introduce the episode, but the character was changed after the original airing.
Yeah. So we're watching Holiday Hi-Jynx, which and we found the original version.
Yes, we did.
Which for those of you that are younger than us, Jynx is one of the original 151 Pokemon. And it's a shaped kind of like a female woman, and it also kind of resembles the unfortunate depictions of Africans.
Let's be honest, it's got a black face.
Yes,
you can't.
So Japanese anime prior to this point has had bad examples of African depictions, people with black skin. Their characters are black with big pink lips, which is in America a very offensive caricature of African Americans.
We've talked about this on the show before. It's really hard to animate a person of another ethnicity and not be offensive unless you're from that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And Japan is generally a country of just Japanese people.
Correct. Yeah. No, it's a trap anytime you try to animate someone of a different, because it's like you have to exaggerate features and it just becomes a problem.
I just think back to like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. There's a character called Mr. Popo who is kind of has like Middle Eastern vibes, but he's also like, I don't know. He might be an alien. I'm not sure, but his face is black and he has the large pink lips, and you look at it and he's wearing a head rest wrapped. I don't know the proper term for it. But like a Sikh. What are they?
Yeah, I never hesitate to call it anything, so I'll get it wrong.
Yes, turban. That's the word I'm looking for. Something akin to a turban. So it's very you see it in older Japanese animations.
So that the Jynx is actually purple in the newer.
Yes, thank you. That was the point Andrew was making, not just having me go off the path.
I did kind of feel like I'd walked into something here, because I was like, I didn't do the background reading before I picked the episode. I was just like, I remember Pokemon. Like my brother loves that show. Like I used to watch it with him. Great, I'll do Pokemon.
Surprise!
And then I did the background reading, and I was like, oh, this episode's been pulled because like it's no longer in Western circulation because
and of course we would talk about
culturally offensive stereotypes. I was like, great, that's what I want to talk about.
Welcome back to the podcast, Scott.
Yes.
It definitely is. It's since this episode, since they pulled this episode, Jynx has been recolored in later generations to be purple face, and skin colored, purple skin tone which I guess makes it better. But yeah, it's still, and this episode, I don't think I've seen screenshots where it's been edited back to be purple, but I've never seen it on a home release that I'm aware of.
Apparently, like the reading I did was it has been recolored, so Jynx is purple in the episode, but apparently for some reason the recolored episode has only ever been aired in Japan. It's what I read.
That makes sense.
So it's never been put in circulation in Western.
And that brings up an interesting thing, because there are banned episodes, at least in the States. I don't know how it was across the pond, but
Or the episode that crossed the epilepsy and the seizures and stuff.
The Porygon episode, yep. That one's never been aired outside.
Kind of everywhere.
Yeah, but that's because it caused epilepsy in children in Japan. But there's also there's an episode
sorry.
No, go ahead. Okay. Yeah. There's an episode where James, there's a tentacruel that attacks a bunch of buildings, and James wears a inflatable boobs, and I don't remember if it was pulled for the trans reason or if it was for the fact that a giant tentacruel was destroying buildings that looked like the Twin Towers. But that may be two different episodes, by the way. But I know.
And the episode with too little gun violence had to be pulled because it just didn't work with American audiences.
Well, actually, the episode with gun violence was pulled, which
is ironic. They're like, no, we can't have gun violence in cartoons, but like in public places in our country, sure, why not?
Yeah, it's only gotten worse. But there's an episode where Ash catches like 30 Taurus, and no one it's never been aired in the West. He goes to the Safari Zone, and the Safari Zone guy is just like has a 6-shooter, and he's all westerny, and they didn't air that. But he catches like 30 Taurus, and like for the rest of the entire series, you're just like, where the hell did he get all these fucking Taurus from? And it was from that episode. So that's the primer for Holiday Hi-Jynx. But yeah, it starts with the epic first American theme or Western theme song for Pokemon, which I think is the best one. Just
so good.
I'm totally on board. You know, it has that kind of rocky vibe to it. It does. All good. Yeah,
it has a little bit of 80s like feel to it at the beginning. And then, compared to because my kids are watching the newer versions on Netflix right now.
Take me on a journey.
Compared to all those, it's definitely choice. I mean, listening to it, I got a little bit misty, so to speak, if you know what so stupid joke.
I think I think that was very common though. Like everything I can think of, like whether it's Ninja Scroll or Trigun or Fist of the North Star or Cowboy Bebop, just 90s anime always had great theme tunes.
Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah, it was good.
Dragon Ball Z is another great example. I
guess I wasn't thinking of it from that point of view. I was thinking of it from like the kids' Saturday morning lineups. They had they had Pokemon, they had Cardcaptor Sakura, they had Yu-Gi-Oh, and they all had that like pseudo butt rock Yu-Gi-Oh, and like it came straight out of Sonic Adventure 2 Battle. But yeah, I guess that's true. The anytime Japanese anime made it to the West, at least like in the mid to late 90s, it had that like epic quality to it, so that you would be enthralled to watch. Like it was, like Thundercats had.
It really pumps you up. It's not 45 seconds of love and marriage.
From Frank Sinatra.
As we saw today
last episode,
tomorrow, yesterday, whatever day it was, we saw it. Oy.
But yeah, my comments were, God, this theme song slaps, and then it got into the second verse, and like, this song motherfucking slaps.
It's true.
But yeah, I got so pumped watching the just the intro. It brought all the feels. It brought all the feels back. I was trying to not say it, but that is exactly what it was.
Yeah, it was.
So the show opens on Jesse in bed trying to catch Santa.
I think actually
Yeah.
I don't think we should skip by this, because this is the thing that made me laugh the most in the episode. Was I think the opening narration to this is great, where it's like a stereotypical kind of holiday Christmas cartoon that's got a really kind of smooth voiceover narration, and it's like, and all the kids in all the world, curl up in their beds and Christmas Eve, and then it's like a kind of one of those kind of record stopping moments, and like, wait a second, that's not a kid. I love that gag.
Very a Christmas Story style narration.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So after the record scratch, they show Jesse trying to capture Santa Claus, but they test it out on James in a Santa costume. And it's at this point I'm like, I actually have seen this episode. I don't know how, but I've seen this episode. It's that we were treated to Jessie's sappy backstory when she was from 10 years ago when she was a kid, and Santa comes, accidentally wakes her up, or she's already up and she's broken a toy, and Santa finds the broken toy on the ground, who is a Jinx, by the way, and steals it and leaves and never returns. I was confused by that, because like later they did find Santa Claus who looked like Santa Claus, which means that like the appearance of Santa Claus is something that exists in Japanese culture. So I was like, why does she not know what Santa Claus looks like? You know what I mean? That's a good point.
But I was clearly overanalyzing this show.
I mean, at the same time, I think it's the early to mid 90s when KFC became like the ritual, like holiday Christmas meal. But hadn't they ever seen the Santa Claus with Tim Allen? No, they prefer him as Colonel Sanders, Colonel Santa. But yes, that is a good point. Why would she? Well, it's a mythological character.
Remember that time when Mario Lopez played Harlan Sanders in like a version of
the Lifetime movie?
Yeah, that Lifetime.
Was that real?
Version? Oh, yeah, where you played like a hot Colonel Sanders or something.
Was that real? Oh God!
I think it was real.
I thought that was a joke.
Yeah, I remember watching the trailer for that, and I can't remember. Now I can't remember if that was a real thing or if it was just like a spoof trailer.
I mean, KFC has done some weird.
It was a short film. It was called A Recipe for Seduction.
Because they've also had a Japanese dating sim style game where you go to a KFC cooking school and you fall in love with your professor who is Colonel Sanders. Seen some people
That's a bit of a rabbit trail.
Yeah.
It's only 15 minutes. Okay, it's fun though.
Yeah. So a Jinx that looked like Mario Lopez. Wait, no. I keep forgetting that we have some bad depictions with this version of Jinx. We get her tragic backstory, and then immediate smash cut to Brock, Ash, and Misty, kind of just like creeping up on a Jinx on a beach, holding a boot, and he just sends Pikachu out to do a thunder shock. Jinx does a lovely kiss and kills him, and then Charmander fires it up with flamethrower, which is atypical of Ash to do an actual type effective move in the anime, especially at this point, because he's just so fucking dumb. But Jinx is an ice type, ice psychic, and Charmander used a fire attack, which is strong against ice.
You make a good point though about the fact that like the backstory was 10 years ago,
yes.
But they depicted her as like being 8.
Yeah.
So is her character like 18 in this series? I always thought she was like an adult.
Yeah, I thought they were like at least early 20s, given they're a part of this gangster team.
Right. Yeah. I guess I thought she was maybe 10, and so that would make her 20.
That's fair.
Okay.
Well, if she was 10, she'd be the same age as Ash is in the Western version of the show. But she looked shorter than Ash, his current depiction.
Why does
Actually, he's particularly tall for a 10-year-old, though. You know, like he's
Sure.
What are these animators like? They've really created impossible standards for women's legs. Like, how?
Yeah, Misty's legs are up to here.
Her legs come up to her armpits. I'm like, whoa.
That's true. That's
crazy.
I mean, like in terms of impossible standard, at least it's not Rob Liefeld. So that's always
fair.
I saw something about how like SpongeBob SquarePants is set an impossible standard for the thigh gap because he just has like these two little stick legs. Okay, that's stupid.
No, I've sent that meme to people before. So Ash tries to catch the Jynx. Jynx blocks a Pokeball with the boot. And then they're like, oh, this Jynx has a boot. Maybe it has a trainer. And we're just like, okay, that's a leap in logic, but we'll do that. They inspect the boot, and on the inside, there's a picture of Santa Claus, which they think, oh, this must belong to the real Santa Claus. My
connection got
logical leap.
Yep.
My connection got kind of janky there. And I didn't really see how they got from like the Jynx to the holding of the boot and looking inside of it. So initially I thought it was a cup of coffee with like a picture of Santa Claus floating in it. I was very confused. And then I went back when my phone started to buffer and it made a lot more sense.
Cup of coffee.
It was like brown inside.
Foamy on the outside. And seeing as we've recently watched Santa Claus, I was like, careful, Ash, if you put that boot on, turn you into Santa.
Yeah. You become Santa Claus or Tim Allen, your choice.
Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. Let's take a quick sidebar. Scott, have you seen the trailer for the new Santa movie? It's coming out the first week of December, so by the time our listeners hear this, it's already come out, but it's Santa plus Die Hard.
You mean Violent Night?
Violent Night, starring David Harbour. Yes.
Where David Harbour plays Action Santa.
Yes.
I'll definitely be watching that.
I was thinking of that when you were talking about the horror Santa movies.
I feel like this new parody horror thing is because it's gaining some traction. The whole Winnie the Pooh horror thing that came out.
Yeah. Have you seen Pooh? I think that's what it was called.
No, I've heard of that. Like, it's I don't know. It doesn't attract me. That I think I'm not sure if that was that real. Was that
was real?
That trailer real?
Well, because Winnie the Pooh entered the public domain, I believe.
Yes.
Oh, right.
So now you can do whatever you want with it.
Yeah. Okay. So naturally,
that's right. I did hear about that, but
immediately desecrate the creation.
It looks really bad from what I've seen of it.
It did look really bad. No, some parody things are great. I mean, I'm very much on board. Like Christmas horror is a great thing. There's many great Christmas horrors out there, or there's a lot of fun ones anyway. There's only a few great ones, to be honest, but a lot of fun ones.
We're fans of the St. Patrick's Day horrors.
Oh yeah, Leprechaun. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, or at least the first one.
Well, we covered on the Guilty Pleasures podcast. We covered Leprechaun in the Hood, so you can your listeners can check that out if they want.
Oh yeah, highly recommend that. And you did Blade Trinity at one point, didn't you?
We did do Blade Trinity. Yeah.
But yeah, and you can find that by looking for New Horror Express on your major podcasting platforms, and it's sprinkled in between the main episodes. Speaking of the main episode, Jinx's trainer is Santa Claus. That's what happened. Santa Claus is Jinx's trainer. Jinx speaks to them telepathically with its hair, and not even full telepathy. It's more like they show, I guess more psychically, they show what happened? They were
basically the way it seems to work is that the Jinx's hair goes up, and it's kind of like you watch a movie in your mind. It like projects its thought into your head.
Yes.
And then that seems to be the concept there.
Yeah. And so they see that Jynx was on an ice that got separated from the main part of the North Pole, which then floated all the way down to the Kanto region of
Very
Pokemon
slowly.
universe. Yeah. And they're then going to take a wooden raft all the way from Kanto to the North Pole. And I thought it would be a good time to bring back Brandon's Geographical Corner, which is a bit that I do whenever I guest on All 90s Action all the time. I kind of look for the logical nature of how things geographically are located and or distance wise, what have you. And so Kanto is the original area in which the original region of Pokemon where this takes place. It's modeled after the Kanto region of Japan, which is kind of, I think Tokyo it's that main part of the main island. And it is 3,752.5 miles away from the North Pole. Tokyo is, which is over 6,000 kilometers. I'd say they start on a wooden raft pulled by Pokemon, which I'm graciously giving them a max of 50 miles per hour in water, which will be a 75-hour trip nonstop or just over 3 days. And as we see in the episode, they don't make it that far. And then Ash gets out and swims in the water, pulling the entire raft. And had I had more effort put into this, I would have calculated how much he's actually pulling and swimming with, but I didn't. So yeah, that's what happens. And thank you for joining me again at Brandon's Geographical Corner.
Yeah, it seems somewhat unlikely that would have been, the mode of travel would have been, successful.
Right.
That's true. And even I, because normally on All 90s Action all the time, when Brandon says things like, Kurt Russell couldn't possibly go glide from the Hollywood sign to over there in LA. I'm usually like, I don't care. But in
movie magic.
Magic. I don't know the geographical layout of LA. I mean, what do I know? Yeah. Anyway, but even I was like, wait a second, they're in Japan, right?
Yep.
How is a bunch of Pokemon and a small boy going to get there on a raft? So I have quite a large, it's a very stretchy band of suspension of disbelief. But even I was kind of like, that seems a bit much.
I do have a hard time watching TV or movies that have that quality where it's like, this is so unrealistic, I can't get past it. Like I can't believe this is real. Then I realize it's not real. So I just need to calm down.
But also Team Rocket is following them in their Gyarados sub that is powered by them cycling.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
which they successfully do. They successfully cycle in this submarine from Japan to the North Pole, which I mean the thighs on Team Rocket must be insane.
Those Meowth
amount
calves.
of cardio doing.
Meowth. And then so while Ash is in the water and he's gotten tired pulling a raft with his two friends on it and a Jynx, yeah, he starts hearing voices in his head, or a voice in his head, and Lapras shows up out of nowhere to take them. And Lapras is another Pokemon. If you're unfamiliar with Lapras, it looks like a giant blue Nessie of a character.
Yeah,
with a shell on its back. Is it designed after the Loch Ness Monster? Is it a magical Leopluridon? Who knows? But apparently it's psychic for some reason, even though it's a water and ice Pokemon.
And it turns rainbow on the outside when it talks to your mind.
And as the Pokedex said, Lapras. This intellectually advanced Pokemon is able to understand human speech. With its mild temperament, Lapras prefers to carry humans on its back rather than engage in Pokemon battles. Yeah, so Lapras is like, oh, I've been watching you, and now that I know that you're so stupid that you would swim naked up to the North Pole, I will take you there myself because Santa sent me or something.
After that description, I feel like Lapras shouldn't be allowed within 200 feet of a primary school. I'm just saying.
I just meant like he jumped into the water in his swim trunks.
I know. I've been watching you for some time.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking while you were saying that, we're kind of poking logical holes in the geographical locations and the distance traveled in a show where we have a 10-year-old boy roaming the Japanese countryside with very little supervision, collecting monsters. So.
And like, my question is, do the monsters have any weight? And then when you put them in a Pokeball, I guess they become weightless because they're somehow digitized?
Yeah, or at least the weight of the Pokeball. That's a good question. I was just thinking that before you said that.
So where are they storing those? He just kind of reaches back into his coat, and all of a sudden he's got a Pokeball. Like, is it like one of those ammo belts that's just got balls on it?
If I remember correctly, in the anime, the balls... also, you can join us at youtube.com/@namely90s to see me mime a ball in front of my face. Yeah, cupping a ball in front of my face. They minimize to a smaller size when you press them, and then they attach to your belt. I've watched this show.
Okay.
Also, I noticed that it was still the fat Pikachu model.
So cute.
If you've seen Pokemon in the last decade or so, they've sexed Pikachu up to be thin.
He's got like pecs now.
Yeah.
No,
no, he's more slender.
I didn't believe that, but like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's more slender now. It looks more like a plushie, and this one he's still kind of in that fat phase.
If you don't think Pikachu's cute, you have no soul. That's my opinion.
That's fair. That's fair.
No, that's fair. That's fair. I know I've not seen that because like I've really only watched Indigo League. I think
yeah, I don't think it changes until after Gold and Silver or whatever that was called. Ash's response is, I'm pretty tough, Lapras. A little cold doesn't bother me. You're going to the fucking Arctic, Ash.
So he's been swimming in like 45-degree water.
Yeah.
You would be hypothermic. Even if it wasn't like freezing water, you'd still be hypothermic with that long in the water. I'm just saying. But
it eventually catches up to them as they get to the Arctic. They are quite cold and all huddled up together under blankets that have also appeared from nowhere. Or apparently is in their TARDIS-sized knapsacks. And Team Rocket shows up right before they get to the main part of the North Pole with Santa Claus. And they do their normal prepare for trouble and make it double speech, except they're shivering the whole time.
I think this was my second favorite gag because they're out of puff from all the cycling and also they're super cold, so they're both
frozen. Yeah.
They're half frozen, shivering, but like also heavy breathing through it. I just thought it was animated just in a very funny.
Yeah, it was a good shake up from the normal, which we haven't seen in 2 decades. Yeah. So they steal the Jynx, and Santa. They crash Santa's workshop. I don't remember exactly. I have written down, and now is a good time to go undercover. Which, yeah. And Santa, we see Santa's workshop, and he's all alone in the North Pole, just up here fucking Jinxes. And I think they replace his elves.
I put that in my notes. Jinxies seem to be elves in this world.
Yeah.
Also, there's a nice
or sex slaves.
Well, possibly. Also, there's a nice pun where James says to Santa, "Yeah, I guess you're going to be tied up this Christmas," and while literally tying him up with a rope. I enjoyed that.
I believe Meowth followed up with, "That's not too bad." With a K.
I like puns, but that's boy.
Yeah.
That's the pun too far, right? The first pun gets a laugh. That it's like you're just pushing the joke a little bit too far there.
And so they steal all the toys that Santa was going to give to the little boys and girls. They get a massive pile of bags onto their sub. And then Jinx reads Jessie's memories about her blaming Santa for not for stealing her toy. And then the Jinx wanders off and comes back with a fixed version of her toy. And Santa is like, "Oh, well, my Jinx took it to me to be fixed, and then ho ho ho, you stopped believing in me, so I couldn't return." And yeah, so she lost faith in him, so Santa can't return, which I guess is nice. Santa believes in consent in the Pokemon world. Yeah, except with Jinxes.
You know what I found creepy was the Jinx like voice.
Oh,
just Jinx. It was like, ugh. Every time it happened, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I was a little put off by that.
Yeah, it is quite creepy, and like between that and the uncomfortable blackface, it's quite
right.
Quite the experience. Because like I actually overall think this is like quite a fun episode, but every time they're on screen, it's just like, hey.
Yeah,
they're a little upsetting, like just in general.
It's like you certainly made a choice there with that, and did a full English voice cast for this episode. Yeah. Lapras comes to their rescue before it's too uncomfortable.
Before everybody gets too uncomfortable, focusing too much on the creepy voice and the blackface.
I have Charmander burns away their rope by lighting it on fire and burning all of them to death.
Yeah, sorry. I immediately was like, ow.
Right? Because he did a full flamethrower there. That wasn't an ember. That was they should have died. Like if I have a burn from a 350 degree oven just by accidentally bumping the upper heating coil, they should be dead.
They untie them by having Pikachu electrocute all of them for a prolonged period of time.
Right. It works in other episodes. And then for some reason, Jessie has James's wheezing and sends it out. And but then, I don't know, Pikachu beats them. I forgot to write down what exactly happened. And the day is saved. Jinx, the Jinx and Lapras. So the Jinx pull the sub out of the water with Psychic, I think.
Using Psywave. Yeah.
Psywave.
Ash's move was stupid. Like, they're frozen. So he burns them?
Yeah.
to unfreeze them.
I was a bit confused by that as well, because I was like, Lapras froze them and it's like, yay, the day is saved. And then Ash kind of unsaves the day, and then we have to save the day again. And I
know.
Huh.
The little submarine goes back down into the water, and I was like, the end.
Well, they couldn't let Ash knowing a type advantage go in his advantage. He has to be stupid enough to do that.
I feel like Ash just got overexcited and was just like, I want to contribute to saving the day. Oh, I didn't. Sorry.
Yeah. Which is classic Ash Ketchum, or Satoshi if you're Japanese about it. So yeah, they save the day. Then Santa goes to deliver his presents, and he has a single Rapidash as his sleigh. Reindeer, I guess, would
Yeah, reindeer.
Yeah.
Policeman reindeer.
And then
he makes it sound like he used to have reindeer because he makes a comment about it. He says, no reindeer. And I was like, I don't know, like he seemed to maybe replace it then.
So just to clarify, because I don't really understand how this works. This entire episode was created and released for the Japanese market and then just dubbed to English.
I want to say this episode had a single release, like it aired once in the at least the US market. I don't have. Let me see. I'm fairly sure that because I've seen this episode before and I don't
like
know.
They don't modify the animation.
Oh, so on the 15th anniversary of the episode's originally planned broadcast date, it aired on the web series Pokemon Smash, or this Pokemon Smash YouTube channel. And that's with Jynx's skin purple instead of black. So
like all the Santa stuff and all that was
that's weird. It says the version has not been dubbed, but we definitely watched a dubbed version.
We did, so that's got to be wrong.
Yeah.
But it was definitely aired in Japan first. Like, because I saw that. I saw that when I looked up. That it was originally aired in Japan in like '98, and then its US air date was '99. I think we're even beyond the US, so maybe even a little bit later for us. I don't know.
So it was on the VHS and in the Indigo League Volume 3 DVD pack set.
Got it.
Yes. And then the English dub also came available on Cartoon Network On Demand back in the early 2010s. Interesting. Yeah. And then, so the episode ends with Team Rocket getting sexually assaulted in bed by a Jynx. And then we get a Pikachu's Jukebox, which I didn't watch because it wasn't the Poke Rap.
I listened to it and it sounded like a bad, like off-brand Backstreet Boys song.
Yeah, that was my thought as well. Backstreet Boys was the first thing that came into my head as well. It's very boy bandy, late 90s boy band kind of shit. Yeah.
All right. And that brings us through the episode.
That's true. I mean, like you were saying about the Jynx thing at the end of the episode. I guess that's something we didn't really venture into. That Jynx's special move is a kind of what we can only be described as a date rape move, where he kisses other Pokemon or people, and it knocks them out. So
yeah, like Jynx, use roofie. No, God, don't do that.
So really the whole package of the voice, the date rape special move, and the blackface really makes the Jynx one of the creepiest and most uncomfortable Pokemon ever created.
And also it can mind fuck you. Like that's the other thing.
That's also another thing.
To watch where those hair tendrils go. Well, what an episode you picked.
What a wild ride this has been. I did not expect all this when picking the innocent cartoon Pokemon.
Yeah, at least we didn't have seizures.
That's true.
Final thoughts on the episode? Anyone want to start?
Yeah, we talk a lot about things from the 90s, and I don't have a great recollection of a lot of them, nor a great connection, but this was definitely the most nostalgic I've felt. Going through this stuff
for an episode you haven't even seen.
This is what we watched.
Yeah,
for years. It was very fun to go back and watch it.
I agree.
Sort of inspiring to maybe go back and watch a few more. And this episode was, it was okay. It wasn't one of my favorites, but it was a lot of fun to watch.
Scott?
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I've not watched Pokemon and I have no idea how long. It's probably got to be like 20 years since I last watched an episode of Pokemon. So it was quite fun to go back and like I said, part of the fun for me was the kind of the nostalgia of watching it with my younger brother. And this wasn't the great, probably not the greatest episode, but it had fun parts in it. And it did remind me, even though, we've talked about the kind of uncomfortable, problematic elements of the episode, but yeah, the Santa stuff was fun. The narration was pretty fun. You get the narration both at the start and end of the episode, and they kind of have like a twist on the kind of typical kind of twee Christmas narration, with that gag at the start and that. And it did remind me how much I think I'm often kind of attracted to villains in like a lot of things. I talk about that a lot in the 90s Action podcast, that a lot of times the villains are the most fun things and things. And it did remind me how much Team Rocket do entertain me. So yeah, it was quite fun to revisit.
Nice. Yeah, I echo your guys' sentiments. It was just starting off with the theme song, the original Pokemon theme song, that got me pumped. And then there are good elements in the episode. There are a lot of uncomfortable elements in the episode, but it was nice to spend another half hour with Ash, Brock, and Misty again.
Yeah,
and watch Jynx sexually assault Team Rocket. And that's it for this holiday edition of Namely 90s. Tune in tomorrow for day 5 of our 12 Days of Christmas specials. Thank you to Scott Murphy of All 90s, All Action, All the Time, and New Horror Express for coming on. Scott, do you want to let everyone know all the places they can find you and your podcasts?
Yes, indeed. So first up, All 90s Action All the Time. You can find us, the podcast, on Anchor. That's where the kind of original place of the podcast. But you can also find it on all the kind of places you find podcasts: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. We're also part of the Last of the Action Heroes podcast network, which has a whole bunch of podcasts covering various action stars: Sylvester Stallone, Bruce Willis, Dolph Lundgren, Jean-Claude Van Damme. There's a Bond podcast. There's a Mel Gibson one. There's a whole bunch. And also for New Horror Express, again, you can either find us on our own website, newhorrorexpress.com, wherever you find podcasts: Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, all of those ones. And also, we are part of another podcast network, the Morbidly Beautiful Network, which has a whole assortment of horror podcasts for every taste. And the Guilty Pleasure podcast that I was talking about is wrapping up on my channel. But the owner of the Morbidly Beautiful Network liked the concept and format so much that they are going to pick up the ball and run with it. So if you look out for the Morbidly Beautiful Network, there will be a new Guilty Pleasures podcast that will not have me hosting, but I might have some contribution and might special guests sometimes, that will be starting in January 2023. So I will end in December and they will start up in January, I believe.
That's really cool. We'll keep the torch going. And as always, you can find us on Twitter, if it still exists, and Instagram at Namely90s with 90s. Find our personal Twitter accounts, again, if Twitter still exists, at Beachway, at Namely Andrew, and tell us what you want us to talk about on future episodes. If you'd like to support the show, please check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Namely90s, also with the 90s. And finally, you can also contact us through our website, Namely90s.com. Please subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Who's That Pokemon, Deezer, TuneIn, iHeart, and wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm Brandon, that's Andrew, and thank you one final time to Scott Murphy from, you're not from Namely 90s, I'm from Namely 90s, from New Horror Express, All Action, all 90s action all the time. And I did this last year. I should have
picked a simpler title.
No, we're half the time. I mean, there was that one episode where you couldn't remember your name or what country you were from.
That was hilarious. I love that episode. That's my favorite episode you ever did.
And let me take this moment to apologize to Scott about that, for knowing that you are from Scotland originally. And tune in tomorrow for day 5 of our 12 Days of Christmas specials, and we'll catch you tomorrow for day 5. What did I do?
Day 5 of day 12. I don't know. And goodbye. until tomorrow.